Hello again. Warm welcome. Second time today. Um, it's New Year's Eve, December 31st, the end of 2021. An interesting year in, in our relationship with the planet Earth, I would say. I did a video a couple of days ago on my reaction to the movie Don't Look Up. And it kind of, watching the movie and thinking about my reaction to it and why I reacted the way I did, kind of has put me back into thinking about where we are, where I'm at, where you may be at. And I know this is not a two-way conversation, but it kind of doesn't have to be, right? You can have your thoughts, and so we're just sharing ideas here, right? Maybe you can share your ideas in the comments about what you think about the last year and the road ahead. So, you know, one day is pretty much the same as another. There's nothing special about New Year's Eve. It's just one calendar. The Jews have a different calendar. There's a Hebrew calendar. The Chinese have a different calendar. There are solar calendars, lunar calendars. There's ancient calendars like the Aztecs and the Mayans, and so there's nothing special about December 31st. But it does present an opportunity once a year for whoever looks for opportunities like that to just kind of step back and say, okay, so something is now a year in the past and something is a year in the future. And we're sitting for the next few hours, we're sitting on this border from one end to the other. And that arbitrary dating phenomenon, the end of the year, calendar year, kind of coincides with a set of thought processes that I've been going through, which is our relationship to the Earth system. So that sounds kind of hokey. I mean, normally we're at December 31st, we're looking back on our personal lives and all the things that went good, and all the things we could have done better, and of course making our resolutions for next year and how we're going to be a better human being next year, and all these things, all these personal things and family things and things with work and friends, and here I am talking about the Earth dynamic system. But I think that now is the time to do that. Maybe I'm the first to do that. That's okay. That's okay. I can be ahead of the curve on that, but I think we need to have this conversation. So this conversation happening now is kind of because of what has happened in the last year. My wife and I have been watching events unfold, and because you're here in this household, we do try to interpret events through the lens of Earth, the Earth system under global heating and climate change, because that's important to us. I think it's important to humanity. Again, if we're early adopters and we're first to understand this, that's okay. We won't be alone for long. Eventually, this is going to be a fairly common concern among thinking people who worry about their place in the universe. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve. But events in the past year, I think, warrant a review. And my thinking is that we will, in hindsight, look back on this year, 2021, maybe 2020, maybe it's a 2 or 3 year period in which there was no going back. That we passed a milestone where there was no going back. And I think we've done that. From here, there's no going back. What do I mean by that? I mean that if there was any question that the Earth system was changing around us, that doubt has been dispelled. If there was any question of the kinds of things that might happen, like we didn't know what would happen, that doubt has been dispelled. We've seen it. The fires, the floods, the severe weather, the weather whiplash, record lows to record highs and back to record lows. The fact that there are record lows at all, right? How does global heating lead to that? It's pretty obvious to most people that something is savagely broken at this point. Now, it's a La Nina year. La Nina is a ocean phenomenon associated with the Pacific Ocean. It's one pole of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. The other pole, the other extreme is El Nino, which was actually discovered first. The El Nino phenomenon, and then the La Nina phenomenon is the talk to the tick. Okay, and they just oscillate back and forth. The El Nino Southern Oscillation, Pacific Ocean heat phenomenon. So we are in a La Nina year, and that generally implies certain things. But the weather for the last 6 months, maybe 8 months, has been seriously unhinged. Just unhinged. Shit is seriously broken. Now, maybe when La Nina is done with us and the ENSO starts to swing back to a more neutral, footing, and maybe even swings over into El Nino at some point, we'll see different things. But we've been in La Ninas before. The ENSO isn't new. I mean, our discoveries and measurements of it and quantification of it is fairly recent science, but it was always there. We didn't invent it. It was always there. We simply discovered it. And I can tell you, from having lived in California and lived in the United States as an adult and being aware of what's going on, things this year seriously unhinged. We have seen weather anomalies that, some of which, like the heat dome in the Pacific Northwest last summer, were off the charts, that were deemed impossible. And these are not scientists, climatologists, and meteorologists don't use words like impossible. They'll say unlikely or out of character or whatever. But the heat dome in the Pacific Northwest was deemed impossible. You can look that up if you want to, find out who said that and why it happened that way, and maybe there's some rationale for it. But they were aghast. They were taken completely by surprise. The fires that we've been seeing in California and the other western states, and even into the plains, like Colorado, are off the charts. Seriously, off the charts. The firefighters describe these fires as unbelievable. These are people that fight fires all the time. They signed up for that. They get paid to do that. They don't mind doing it. They're not complaining about the fires like, oh, these fires, wish they'd stop having fires. I'm tired of fires. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, I fought many fires, and these fires are unbelievable. They're just off the charts. They're scary. They're phenomenal. The fires we've been having in California and the other western states, it's like they're animals. It's like they're alive. They have a mind of their own. They're just, they have a will. They have so much energy, so much power, that they just overwhelm people. Our entire firefighting apparatus, overwhelmed. Unbelievable. That's coming from the frontline people fighting the fires. We're in the middle of a drought. Now, maybe the recent rains have changed that. Thank you, La Nina, for the wet weather. But if it hasn't changed that, we're in drought conditions that are to boggle the mind. All the major reservoirs in the West, Lake Mead, Lake Powell, Shasta, Oroville, everything, local municipal catchments. We have our Anderson Reservoir here. It's actually taken down for earthquake retrofit, so it has no water. But things like that, Anderson Reservoir, our local one, all over the states, in a 12-state area, are down 50% or 60% or 70%. Oroville Reservoir, one of the major reservoirs in California, got so low that they had to cut off water to the power plant. There's a power generator at the bottom of the dam, and one of the services of the dam project, in addition to capturing water for irrigation, is to use that water to generate electricity. And the water level got so low relative to the turbine room that there was no head, and they couldn't turn the turbines, so they just shut off the power generation. First time ever since the dam was built. First time ever. You run out of superlatives. You just run out of ways to talk about this. We don't have language to define what happened this year. And when I say it's unhinged, I'm trying to imply something about the ferocity of the situation. It's not just the worst in 100 years or the worst in 1,000 years or unprecedented or unseen. It's insane. We're in a situation this year, just ending today, this calendar year, we're in a situation that's insane. It defies understanding. They had a gigantic fire just yesterday, went through suburbs south of Boulder, Colorado, burned 1,000 homes, 100-mile-an-hour winds peaking at 115 miles an hour. That's hurricane strength, straight line winds, just coming off the Rocky Mountains. Just blew through those places, knocked some lines down, set fire to the grass. It was a grass fire. People ignore grass fires. I've seen thousands of grass fires here in California. They start alongside the road from a car, backfiring, or the catalytic converter sets the grass on fire when they run off the road, whatever. Grass fires, it burns half an acre, 1 acre. You just drive right by. You don't even think about it. It's a grass fire. Who cares? The very same grass fire in Colorado, day before yesterday, destroyed 1,000 homes. It's completely unhinged. People are saying, yeah, I got out of my car, was going into the Costco, and I could see that there was some smoke down the road a ways, a grass fire, I guess. Didn't think anything of it. I went into Costco, and 15 minutes later, the police are telling us to evacuate the Costco, and I go outside and can't even find my car in the smoke. Everything's on fire. Everything's burning. Everything's on fire. Can't even find my car. It's unhinged. It's like, what? What just happened? Blew through these communities so fast that people couldn't grab anything. They just got their car and left. And fortunately, these were not mountain communities. When something like that happened in the city of Paradise, up near where I used to live, people couldn't get out. People got in their cars, and then it was bumper to bumper, and there was no roads, and it was up and down, and it was dark, and it was trees, and people ran out of gas, and then they ran off the road, and then it was backed up bumper to bumper, and pretty soon the cars were on fire and the people in them. So that's the other extreme, when things get unhinged and the fire comes through so fast you can't get away. But these people, suburbs, Denver, big city, lots of roads, big wide roads, no mountains, no narrow mountain roads, no winding roads, big, 4-lane boulevards, and they got out. So fine, nobody died. But this is going to be another $1 billion event. We just keep having these $1 billion events. Joe Biden comes down there with his checkbook and starts writing checks. Here's one for you, and here's one for you, and here's $1 million there, and $1 million here. And 1,000 homes burned at $1 million a piece of insured losses. Not completely out of the question. Some of those were hotels, some of them were businesses. So yeah, $1 million on average. 1,000 of them at $1 million a piece is $1 billion. One fire, 6 hours, $1 billion. Absolutely unhinged. This is just insane. It's completely insane. Now, we've been having a couple of years of increasing evidence that things are coming unhinged, that the Earth dynamic system is well, as someone else called it, it's an angry beast. We have awoken an angry beast, okay? And I think this year, I'm prepared to call it. This was the year. 2021, we got to see something. Now, the actual point of this video is not to recap all the terrible things that happened in hand ring, doom porn, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it was interesting. I watched it closely. I learned a lot from it. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video, I guess there's two of them. One purpose is to let you know that this was the year that lit the fuse. This was the year that even better analogy, that pushed us off the edge of the map. A lot of the stuff that happened this year is off the map, off the charts. We don't know what we're looking at. We don't know what this means. We don't know where this is going. There are no road markers beyond here. The stuff that happened shouldn't have happened, was insane, unhinged, unprecedented, never seen before, impossible. These are the kinds of things we were hearing applied to these events. And you say, well, we've had fires before. Oh, we have hurricanes. We've had tornadoes before. We've even had tornado outbreaks. We've even had F5 tornadoes before. It is nothing. Okay, you can say that. But the people who look at the data and actually study this stuff, who don't have normalcy bias or an agenda or some kind of self-delusional complex, who actually look at the numbers, say, oh yeah, yeah, that's never happened before. That should not have happened. Like that right there, that should not have happened. And that was impossible. We don't even know how that happened. How it happened. We know it happened. We were there. We saw it, but we don't know how that happened. We're still trying to figure out what. Okay, so the people who look at the data and people who understand the arc of history and the phenomena of weather and climate and Earth systems and the balances of these systems, people who understand this are unnerved by what they've seen. Individual events appear unhinged. It's just not moored to reality. It's not tied to reality. We have turned a corner, I believe. Or maybe it's La Nina and things will settle down a little bit for a year or two, but I think we've turned a corner. I think we've turned a corner. And the angry beast has awakened. The angry beast has awakened, and there's no going back at this point. If you ever entertained a shred of hope that we could somehow do something, whatever that was supposed to be, please explain that we're going to do something to fix the situation before it got out of hand. Well, guess what? It's out of hand. Okay. Now, maybe you can do something to prevent things from just spiraling completely, into the ditch alongside the road. Maybe we can keep this thing somehow managed, but I don't think so. I think we've turned a corner. In 2021, I'm certainly considering 2021 to be the first evidence that the beast has awakened. All right. So here's what you need to know. Global heating is an atmospheric phenomenon. It's physics. It's not politics. It's not opinion. Also, like time and entropy, it kind of goes one direction. You don't reverse this. It doesn't even reverse itself. Reversing this is something that happens over geological time, like mountain building, or literally mountain tearing down. Erosion is how you deal mostly with atmospheric CO2. There's not going to be any event like plants burying it in the ground and it being in the ground like coal and oil and natural gas. Those were conditions that were 500 million years ago. Those conditions no longer exist. It's going to take geological processes, essentially erosion, to sequester the carbon, put it back in the ground. And then it won't be fossil fuels either. It'll be buried rock, okay, carbonate rocks. So this is going to be with us now for a long time. And every day that we dig up oil over here and burn it there and release it into the atmosphere, that process burdens us with yet more of the same for generations to come. We are not cutting back on our fossil fuel consumption. We're just not doing that. We're not doing that. We are not going to do that. I've seen enough IPCC reports and enough conference of the parties, COPs, to reading between the lines, we're not going to do this. We're not going to eliminate our consumption of fossil fuels. We're just not going to do that. And everything that we burn and emit into the atmosphere, or some of it makes its way into the oceans, is going to stay there for thousands of years. So that means that every degree or part of a degree of temperature that we accumulate on the Earth it's going to be with us for thousands of years. And some of it will go into the sea, and some of it will come out of the sea and back into the atmosphere. But this is going to be with us now for thousands of years. And every day we go forward, exactly as we've gone forward in the past, we push ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper. They have a saying, when you find yourself deep in a hole, you should stop digging. Well, we're not going to stop digging. We're going to dig even faster. There's 1,000 homes outside of Denver, Colorado that have to be rebuilt. And that's going to happen during a time when supply chains are broken. You can't even get lumber in some places. You can't even get the things you have to have. They're saying that homes that are being built now for people who have money can't even get finished because they can't get the materials they need to finish the house. So how are you going to build 1,000 new ones? And you need to do that right now. Those people have no homes. Where are they going to go? Hotel rooms? Are you serious? We're just digging ourselves deeper into a hole. And every new fire that burns through is going to require more fossil fuels to rebuild. And every heat dome that comes through and kills a bunch of people is going to require more fossil fuels to buy air conditioning and bury those people. And it just keeps going on. It's aggravating feedback. Boom. You get hit over here and you have to respond over there. And it's just fossil fuels got us hit upside the head, and then we have to have fossil fuels to repair ourselves. And it's the same story. We will rebuild. We're not afraid of fire. We're not afraid of floods. We're not afraid of tornadoes. We're not afraid of hurricanes. We're not afraid of heat domes. We're not afraid of freezing cold. We're not afraid of anything. We're just going to rebuild. That's what people say. So I believe them. That's what they're going to do. And when the sea level starts to rise, well, we'll build seawalls, and we'll put our houses on stilts, and we'll move our cities further inland. That's what they're going to do. And you're just digging yourself deeper into a hole because you don't know what else to do with yourself. This doesn't get better. If 2021 was an eye-opener and rewrote the record books in many important categories, then that's just going to be our future. Not every year will be worse than the year before, but taken on average, on aggregate, the future is just going to be worse and worse. I guess you can't have fires anymore if you burn down every single forest. So we have that working for us. I guess you can't have fires anymore if you burn down every single suburb. All right. So there's an exit strategy for you. Burn everything, and then you don't have fires anymore. Okay, fair. And if you flood out enough communities in Kentucky and Tennessee and Georgia, and people don't rebuild, and those cities are completely gone, well, then the next time it floods, you won't even notice, right? Well, okay, fair enough. And when people have left these areas and they can't survive there anymore, and they just move out, well, the news reporters go with them. So the next time there's a disaster, there won't be anybody there. Nobody will report on it. It's like when Alaska has a 90-degree day, there's no one up there to notice, right? Okay, fine. Our problems go away, right? As people die and people leave and people, become irrelevant or whatever, no one cares anymore, your problems go away. But that doesn't mean they go away. Things are going to get worse. Things are going to get so bad in the coming years because we've awoken this system, this beast. Things are going to get so bad with every passing year that in a few years, you're not going to recognize this planet. You're not going to recognize you're part of this planet. You're not going to recognize your state, your neighborhood. You're not going to recognize your winters. You're not going to recognize your springs. You're not going to recognize your summers. You're not going to recognize your falls. You're not going to recognize your holidays. You're not going to recognize your farmland. You're not going to recognize your rivers and your lakes and your mountains. It's just all going to become alien. Too much rain, not enough rain. Too much snow, not enough snow. It was burning, and then it was landslides, and then it was snow, and then it was burning again. And where'd the animals go? And where'd the people go? I don't recognize this anymore. And 2021 was the year of going off the edge of the map. We've left the edge of the map, folks. The weather, the climate, the catastrophes. I'm not into doom porn. I'm into data. And we're off the edge of the map. We are completely off the edge of the map. And it's going to get worse. And we're not even going to be able to find the map to get back on the map. It's done. We're not going home. We're not going to click together our red slippers and go home. There's no place like home. We're done with all that. So I don't know how long this runway is. How long can it get bad? No one can really project. Since we're at the New Year's Eve of the next year where things can continue to get worse, I'll roll out some data for you. Okay, let's have some data, shall we? Once CO2 is released into the atmosphere, it takes 10 to 20 years for it to have the full effect of forcing the planet to get warmer. Okay, it takes that long. So the global heating we're seeing say in 2020, just for round figures, was actually caused by CO2 that was released in the 2005 to 2010 timeframe. So, for example, when China was starting to become a major industrial power, when the U.S. was beginning to export a lot more jobs and businesses to places like China and Indonesia, where they have no regulatory frameworks. They're not reducing any carbon emissions. They don't reduce pollution of any kind, okay? And so our level of heating today is because of emissions back then. We are today consuming 50% more fossil fuels than we did in 2005 or 2010. Many more countries, including China, have become more like the US in terms of consumer patterns, GDP, GDP growth of the suburbs, growth of median wages, increases in population, of course, make everything even more obvious. So today, these countries are emitting a lot more CO2 than they did in, say, 2005. So today's emissions will be felt by us in, say, 10 years from now. So let's call round figures again, 2030. And we're not making any efforts today, zero, to reduce fossil fuel emissions or fossil fuel consumption and carbon dioxide emissions. So therefore, in every subsequent year after this one, we can expect carbon emissions to continue, methane emissions to continue, consumption of fossil fuels to continue, biggering and GDP growth to continue. And there's no end in sight to that, except that, it will eventually collapse under its own weight. But when will that happen? Why are you doing this?
I'm just gonna move on.
What?
Just go ahead.
I don't understand. What just happened? Why? What just happened?
That's just Facebook Live that you're on.
Oh, okay, fine. Where was I? Okay, so if we were to stop carbon emissions today, we would have 10 to 15 to 20 years more of continued aggravation of this situation, worsening and worsening and worsening. Now, La Niñas will come and go, El Niños will come and go, but the situation doesn't get any better from here out. From here out, we run out of language probably to describe what we're experiencing. Things like never before seen, worse than ever, off the charts, unhinged. We're going to need more adjectives, okay? We're going to have to reinvent language. We're going to have to put a scale on these things, right? Tornadoes have a scale. Yeah, hurricanes have a scale, 1 to 5, right? Or I guess increasingly 1 to 6. There you go, more data for you, how bad things are getting. So we're going to need a scale for our situation. So let's just invent one. Let's say it's a 5-point scale, and from doing okay to wow, we're not going to survive. Okay, so 1 to 5. Right now we're a 1. With all the bad things that happened, we're just a 1. These are early days, right? Early days. We're at the 1. In 5 years, we'll be at a 2. And maybe 5 years after that, maybe even less, we'll be at a 3. And at some point, it gets to where every single day it's just a struggle to survive. Things are so broken. The Earth dynamic system that has nurtured us for 10,000 years of recorded history and 100,000 years of just us managing not to get, killed by ice ages. The Earth system that we've known during this period is running away. It's going someplace. I don't know where it's going, but over the next 50 years, it's going there. It's going there. And 2021 was bad enough and unhinged enough for me to say that, yeah, we are now off the map. And we're not getting back on the map, I don't believe. There's no going back from here. We're going to be going forward, dragged forward into a future that is going to be getting increasingly and progressively worse. And this cannot be stopped. There is no political will to stop this. And even if there was, even if in some imaginary parallel universe, every world leader suddenly woke up one day and realized what they have to do. Okay, now that's obviously fiction. That's some parallel universe. That's a Steven Spielberg movie. But with James Cameron with great special effects and wonderful actors, and it's a movie where the world leaders wake up suddenly and they all join hands and sing Kumbaya, and we're going to save the world now, and watch us do this. And that's fiction. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. That's not never going to happen because I'm cynical. It's not never going to happen because it's not in their best interest for that to happen. They have other interests. Saving the world is not even on the list. It's not even in the top 10. But even if they did wake up one day, popped up out of their personal dreamscape and realized, oh my God. Even if that happened, it wouldn't make any difference, because the emissions we emitted, the carbon we emitted today, and the methane we emitted today, and the nitrous oxides that we emitted today are going to be with us for tens of thousands of years. And the impact of those emissions won't even be felt completely for 10 to 15 to 20 years. So even if everybody in a position to make a difference woke up tomorrow morning, woke up from a good night's sleep, woke up in the morning and said, well, time to tackle climate change. We're going to leave all the fossil fuels in the ground. And that's what would be required, by the way. It's not, well, we're going to electrify all the cars and no. We're going to leave the fossil fuels in the ground. If every political leader woke up tomorrow morning after a good night's sleep and said, this is the day we leave all the fossil fuels in the ground, and they went to the oil wells and they turned off the switch, no more pumping. They went to the coal mines, they say, hi guys, you're all out of work, go home. We'll find you a new job. You're done mining coal. And they went to the gas fields and they went to the fracking pumps. They turned off the power. Okay, if they did that, left it in the ground, not efficiencies, not carbon capture, not unicorns and rainbows, just turned it off, okay? It wouldn't matter. We would have 20 more years of increasing badness, further and further off the map, more and more superlatives. Category 1, category 2, category 3, worse and worse for 10, 15, 20 years. And then at whichever point it starts to stabilize, okay, this is the level of harm now, boys and girls, because 20 years ago, we decided to stop burning fossil fuels, and now it's 20 years later. Phew, well, we got to this point. Now the harms have stabilized. They're not getting worse, but that's now the level of harm. What is it? Massive tornado outbreaks in the U.S. Midwest that travel 400 miles across the ground, destroying entire communities, just ripping them out of the ground, casting them 40,000 feet into the sky. If that becomes our new normal 20 years from now, well, then that's going to be the new normal forever, for thousands of years. If we stop today burning fossil fuels, flip the switches, send the miners home, we're done, phew, dodged a bullet. Well, whatever the bullet was, we dodged it, even if we did it today, and we're not going to do it today because 1,000 homes just burned outside of Denver, Colorado, and those have to be rebuilt. And the community of Paradise in Butte County here in Northern California completely burned to the ground, and all that has to be rebuilt. And there were tornadoes that went through Western Kentucky this month, December 10th. They just destroyed everything, and all that has to be rebuilt. And there was flooding in a different part of Kentucky and Tennessee, and all that has to be rebuilt. And the Thwaites Glacier, the Doomsday Glacier, has become destabilized, and it's going to enter the sea, and that's all land-based ice, and we don't know when it's going to happen, but it's happening. So now we have to start planning for 20 inches of sea level rise, and that means building seawalls, and we have to do that. All your coastal communities, all those fancy houses down on the beach, all that stuff, it's going to be underwater. 20 inches of sea level rise. I mean, we can barely manage the 1.5 inches or 3/4 of an inch, whatever it is, we've had in the last 100 years. It's already annihilating coastal communities. And you might question, well, how is that possible? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's how the system works. Where we build cities is very sensitive to sea level. So 20 inches of sea level rise is essentially the end of the world for these coastal communities. I don't know when that's going to happen, but now we're on glide path. And the instability of the Thwaites Glacier, the Doomsday Glacier, was examined and determined and shared this year, 2021. The instability of the ice sheet on Greenland was also revealed. If not this year, then the end of last year. So let's give the credit to 2021. All right. Another one that's going to go. When it's going to go, don't know. It's in the future. But okay, here it comes. The beast is moving. We can't even stop these things. There's really nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do as individuals, as governments, as a community of nations. There's nothing that can be done. And you can say, well, electric cars and windmills and more solar panels and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, making all of that requires fossil fuels. I have solar panels on my house. I didn't put them there to reduce my carbon footprint. I know there's a huge carbon footprint that goes into manufacturing that stuff in China and then shipping it over all the way over here on a ship. Okay, I didn't make them myself. They weren't locally sourced. All this stuff comes from overseas. All of it. Down to the last diode. Every piece of aluminum, plastic, glass, silicon, all of it. All the logic boards, the wire, everything comes from overseas. Huge carbon footprint. That's not why I put solar panels on my house, to reduce my carbon footprint. I put solar panels on my house because I believe the distributed electrical grid is going to completely fail, and I want to have power. I want to have electricity in the event that the local and regional electric grid completely collapses. For whatever, fires, lack of maintenance, too many electric vehicles needing to be charged on hot days, whatever the reason is, doesn't even matter. It's going to break. I want to have power. That's why I have solar panels on my house. That's why I have batteries in my storage shed. I don't want to be without power. And having that doesn't save the planet from global heating. Saves me from not having power, a problem that will be caused by and exacerbated by global heating. Okay, so I've got mine. I made sure that happened. I can't help anybody else, but I've got mine. I'm trying to get out ahead of this thing. Wish me luck, I guess. And you should be doing the same thing, because it only gets worse from here. Every year, worse. Every year, the fires get bigger until there's nothing left to burn, which is a different kind of problem. And every year, we lose more old growth redwoods. And every year, we lose more spotted owls. And every year, we lose more animals of every kind, until finally, there's not an animal you can name left on the planet. No giraffes, no rhinos, no elephants, no wildebeest, no gnus. Because that's where all of this is headed. Worse and worse, faster and faster, bigger and bigger, hotter and hotter. From now until, I don't know when it stops getting worse. I don't know when it stops getting worse, but it doesn't happen until 20 years after we stop burning fossil fuels. It keeps getting worse until 20 years after we stop burning fossil fuels. Because that's what's driving this. Now, there's a lot of bad things that happen when you stop burning fossil fuels. I know that. You can't feed 8 billion people. You can't keep 8 billion people inside their respective borders. You can't even feed the people in the cities with the food in the countryside without fossil fuels. There's a lot of things that go completely sideways when you don't have fossil fuels. I am absolutely aware of that. Don't tell me that I don't understand what happens when we stop burning fossil fuels. I know better than anybody alive what happens when we stop burning fossil fuels. I know exactly how dependent we are on fossil fuels. The electrical grid is going to completely collapse. Absolutely collapse, completely implode. Not 1 volt available anywhere in the entire system when we stop burning fossil fuels, or even just cut back. It's the first 10% that murders you. The first 10% reduction in global economic output, or even any type of economic output, first 10% of reduction is called a major depression. And yet we have to reduce our output as driven by fossil fuels by 100%, because we have to leave it in the ground. Ta-da! And if we don't leave it in the ground, we're blown. And yet if we leave it in the ground, we're still blown. And I think 2021 is the year in which we turn to that corner. That from here forward, it will be definitively obvious, absolutely, categorically, undeniably obvious to any thinking person, denialists included, that we've turned a corner. Maybe not every single year. Maybe some years we get a little slack. We get a little breather. Use this year to rebuild the burned homes. Use this year to, fill your water cistern, whatever little slack we get from the system before it comes roaring back to beat us about the head and shoulders again. Take your off years when you can get them, because every year from here on out is going to be pretty bad, getting worse on some kind of trajectory every year. For 20 years, for 30 years, for 100 years, it just keeps getting worse every year on average. For 100 years. And then wherever it stops getting worse, when people finally look back and say, well, you know, it seems to have stabilized, whatever that point is, whatever year that happens, then those conditions are the conditions we have to live with for 10,000 years. Because there's no plan, there is no technology to fix this that doesn't involve copious, continuous applications of fossil fuels. And you can say, well, that can't be right. Yes, that can be right. Well, that we could change that. Well, you haven't. Show me. Show me how you're going to change that. Hand wave, miracles, unicorns. Okay, yeah, fine. Moving on. Don't want to hear about your miracles. I understand the technology of solving the problem is as well as anybody alive. There isn't much to understand. If you really try to understand it, there isn't much. And it's easy to understand all of it all the way down. And when you look at it and you look at the requirements for money, for energy inputs, for political will, for treaties and agreements, and you look at it, you're like, that's all you got? That's what's going to save us? Really? I don't think so. You know, maybe all these world leaders are going to wake up one morning and all hold hands and sing kumbaya and you know, make it happen. But if that's what you got, that's all you got. Everybody waking up one morning, holding hands and singing kumbaya, and we're going to shut off the fossil fuels and save everybody, and every child gets a pony. That's what you've got? I'm not buying it. And you shouldn't be buying it either. Well, that's our only hope. Well, then, let me tell you about the story of Pandora. You're grasping to your only hope. Pandora got the box of all the evils in the world, and she opened the box, the poor girl, and she let out all the evils in the world. And the last thing out of the box was hope. The box contained all the evils of the world. So what does that make hope? One of the evils of the world. I mean, the Greeks don't fuck around, okay? That was their story. And you can interpret it any la-la way you want to. Hope is an evil. Why is it an evil? Why is hope an evil? And why is clinging to hope such a bad thing? And why are you being this way? Well, because having hope keeps you from doing what you have to do to save yourself. I'll just pray and I'll wish on a star and I'll rub my lucky rabbit's foot and, you know, I'll hope and I'll wait and see if anything nice happens. Nothing nice is going to happen from here forward. And people clinging to hope as if that's an appropriate adult response. I'll just hope for a better outcome. I'll just hope somebody figures this out. I'll hope somebody comes along and helps me do the right thing because I'm too weak to do it myself. I will hope for a better day. If that's all you got, that's what you got. That's your whole game. That's your whole plan A is hope. Good luck then, okay? Good luck with all that. Seriously, good luck. Because from here on out, we're fighting for our lives. 2021 was the year when the beast awoke. And the fires are not going to get smaller until there's nothing left to burn. And the floods aren't going to go away until everybody has been flooded out and the flood-prone areas are empty of people. That's when the floods stop. Was when there's nobody to be flooded. When those towns are all washed away and those people are gone and those children have died and that hospital was inundated and that school is gone, then we won't go to that place and say, oh, look, it's flooded. It just won't be news anymore. That's when the floods stop. When everything has been destroyed and no one cares. And this is the year when we entered that process funnel. This is the year. So now I have, what is this? What is this?
It's the tea from the herbs we grew outside.
Ah, yes.
Whatever that one is, I think.
Well, I'm done.
Mullen.
I'm done haranguing people. I'm going to enjoy my warm tea
Let's see.
and my whatever else.
Okay.
And have a good year, everybody. Watch your back. Learn to read the signs. Be situationally aware, as I like to say. Learn how to be situationally aware. Learn your situation. Walk outside your house and ask yourself, what hazards are there here? Am I near a river? Am I under a landslide? Are there trees? Is this going to burn? How do I get out of here? No, there's this narrow road, and then the road could be blocked by cars that run out of gas. And do I have a bicycle? Do I have a motorcycle? How am I going to get out of here? Become situationally aware. Look that up in the dictionary. Look that up on Wikipedia. Situational awareness, right? Figure out what that means. Because that's going to be your challenge for the next year or several, is to understand your situation. Because this beast is coming. It is awake. It is now moving. And it's not happy with us.
You know, one question I had, if you can explain, and you kept mentioning it, and I'm just trying to clarify it. And you kind of clarified for me, but it was 20 years. What we are putting in, it takes 20 years for it to have an impact.
The analogy,
slow moving.
Yes. Why does it take 20 years for carbon emissions today to actually impact the system completely? Okay. There's a really good analogy, and it's exactly appropriate. Okay. So here's the analogy. You're in bed on a winter night. It's cold. Your room is cold. Your bed is cold. The blankets are cold. You are cold. You decide to throw an extra blanket on the bed. Okay. So you go to the chest and the cedar chest, and you pull out an extra blanket and you throw it on the bed. That's going to fix everything. You get back in the bed. You're still cold. The blanket didn't bring heat with it. What is the source of the heat? You are. What does the extra blanket do? It traps the heat. You didn't have enough blankets on your bed to trap the heat to keep yourself warm. So you throw a new blanket on the bed. Now you can start trapping more heat. But you are the source of the heat. The bed doesn't even start warming up until you get in it, because you are the source of the heat. So you get in the bed and you shiver and you shake. And slowly, as you emit heat from your body, the new blanket traps the heat. And after 20 minutes, you're warmer. You warm the bed and the blanket just traps the heat from you. It's the same thing with atmospheric CO2 levels. You emit this atmospheric CO2. It goes into the atmosphere like a blanket. It starts trapping heat. And over 20 years, it will trap enough heat to be saturated. And now it has warmed the atmosphere. Except that every single day going forward, we put another blanket on the bed. Every year, we put another blanket on the bed. And every year, it's going to take 10, 20 years for the heat to accumulate just for that year's blanket.
So what it is that the 20 years, that because it's a heat trapping gas, it takes, like every time we burn fossil fuel, all the fossil fuels, and every little molecule of CO2 as it's in this atmosphere is like a blanket. And it takes that 20 years for it to really raise the temperature of our planet, because that's what we're talking about.
It takes 20 years for any given level of CO2 and methane emissions to warm the planet as much as that thing can. It takes 20 years.
As much as that, as much as we put in.
The sun, the light and the heat from the sun comes from the sun, hits the earth, radiates from the earth, is trapped by the atmosphere, and that process takes 20 years, 10 to 20 years.
To
saturate
the impact of
the level of warming that you just injected into the system by emitting CO2.
I mean, burning of fossil fuels. Mostly
burning fossil fuels, although making cement also emits CO2.
Very high. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Right. And I just sit over here. I was looking as I was coming back to. I was just looking at our cement.
Don't bump me when I'm trying to drink from this.
I was looking at just highway. I guess I'm just going to sit over here. Get in.
Why?
I'll just say hello. And I was just looking at cement, and just looking at our highways. and just seeing the columns, how much cement we have when you build a highway.
Why does it matter?
It's just the intensity of how much cement we've used. Like you say, like all of our
Okay,
highways.
well, you haven't
use
seen
cement.
anything yet.
Right.
We're going to be using cement to save ourselves from sea level rise
Right.
by the trillions of tons of this stuff. We're probably going to run out of limestone, which is a necessary ingredient to make cement.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
We're going to use so much cement.
Right.
And people are going to rebuild houses out of cement because of fire.
Right.
Just so they don't die in a fire.
Right. So anyway, but I was thinking about the analogy we were saying, or the concept that you're trying to explain to us, is that when we, as we emit our fossil fuels and our, using cement that also emits CO2, we get this heat trapping. And then at a certain point, like right now, we're at 1.2 degrees C above pre-industrial. This is the measurement that we're talking about, right? That's the measurement as how much heat trapping, like 1.2 degrees C, which is about 2.7 or 9 degrees F. Right?
Why does it matter?
Well, I'm just to give an analogy, or give an explanation. It's quite a bit, and that is our temperature, the temperature of our planet, right? Just like we have our temperature when we take our temperature.
But people are going to say that 2 degrees Fahrenheit swing one way or the other happens every day. Okay, during the daytime it's
that's 80
degrees, and at nighttime it's 70 degrees.
Right.
And hell, that's 10 degree swing right there. Ha ha! What are you talking about?
Right.
Okay, that's weather.
Right.
That's not climate.
Right.
A 2 degree swing in climate is essentially the destruction of the world.
But that's
the difference between an ice age and not an ice age.
Okay, and that's the temperature of the Earth. Are they're able to take temperatures of the Earth by just getting little things all around the Earth?
Well, it's hard to do because the Earth has a lot of weather,
right?
And you have to average over many years and over many weather stations, and that's what they've come up with.
Right, that it's a 1.5 degrees anomalously high compared to pre-industrial, that they've been taking records of the whole Earth.
Now, I think that whole thing, I'm convinced that this whole meme of the average global temperature is an absolute distraction and a red herring.
Oh, really?
Right now, in the U.S. Southeast and South, they are having temperatures that are 20 degrees above normal. Not 1 and not 2, 20 degrees above normal.
Right.
Now, why is that? Well, that's because the Gulf of Mexico is so hot with a bunch of trapped heat transferred there from the atmosphere, which is the source of all the global warming is the atmosphere. It gets trapped in the water because why?
I don't know, just looking at
why.
Okay, there it is. That's it.
Because the water has a high specific heat, and because the Gulf of Mexico is so hot, then Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, the other states end up being so hot, and they have 90-degree weather in December on Christmas Eve. Okay. So there's a mechanism to explain why it's record temperatures on Christmas Day in Texas and the other southern states. Okay, there's a mechanism to describe that.
Right. Yeah.
But that mechanism is driven by global heating. And when we say that we've had a 1.2 degrees rise globally, that gets translated in some places a lot worse than 1.2 degrees.
And it's average 1.2, like we have, like you're saying, like in the Arctic,
Gulf of Mexico.
And the Arctic is 40 degrees.
The Gulf of Mexico is a lot hotter than the average.
As well as the Arctic,
and
the Arctic.
The temperatures in the southern states right now are elevated to crazy nutty levels, record breaking. They broke like 200 temperature records on Christmas Day in the South. That's also global heating, but that's not 1 degree. It's not 2 degrees. It's 20 degrees. So how does that happen? Well, amplification.
Right.
The Gulf of Mexico is super crazy hot.
Right. So what we're talking about when we're talking about,
and yes, that affects the average global temperature, but the Gulf of Mexico is super crazy hot.
Right. And it takes 20 years for the CO2 to have an impact where it can really be registered in this scale of our above pre-industrial levels. That's what we're talking about.
And every year that we burn fossil fuels and or cook cement, then we throw another blanket on the planet.
Right. And then it takes
takes 20 years for the blanket to have an effect.
Right.
And the temperatures we're seeing now, like for example in the Gulf of Mexico, are the result of CO2 emissions in 2005 and 2010.
Right. And so what we're emitting now, it won't be cumulatively
It will not be
effective, that we
fully
won't feel it
effective until
until 20
2030 or
years.
after.
Well, more than that, almost 2040 or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
20, 30 to 40, 10 to 20 years. But then what you're saying is that once we put it in, it cannot come out for 10,000 years. That's the other number. That's the other
It is
stuff.
only
That's it.
removed
Yeah.
unless you're a
Geological
science
process.
fiction writer.
Right.
It's only removed using geological processes,
Right.
like
Not
weathering, mountain weathering,
Yeah, not the
or
the Hopi.
carbonate rocks forming in the ocean.
Okay, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
What you said, carbonated rocks in the ocean.
Forming in the ocean,
and
or weathering of mountains.
weathering.
And since
Weathering of mountains, actually.
and since they know this, that one of the schemes to pull CO2 from the atmosphere is to go to gigantic mountains, blast the rock out with dynamite, crush it into tiny particles, and encourage weathering.
CO2 weathering, CO2 absorption, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Right, or
I don't have enough background in geology to even know what that means.
Or these trillion.
All I know is that that's one of the schemes they're proposing.
Right, but
is to enhance the weathering effect.
Right.
Natural weathering is too slow, so we do artificial weathering,
like
using
cracking
dynamite and gigantic earth movers. Okay.
Right. Or what the trillions of dollars they're proposing, these mechanisms to capture carbon. But what I was thinking about, to capture carbon. So,
And headlines today revealed that the few trials of carbon capture that they've done in the U.S.
right.
at stationary sources, so coal-fired power plants where they can just capture everything that comes out of the smokestack, right?
Oh, right.
Have failed.
And then they're saying, and one of the benefits
Billions
of
of dollars
capturing
spent.
the carbon,
Didn't do any
will
good.
use it in some ways. Like they say, they use it for soda. They're able to sell it to Pepsi, the carbon dioxide.
Yes.
But they're saying that
and it gets released back into the atmosphere,
right,
which
and
is completely.
But the bad thing,
which is the actual definition of insane.
Right, and the other bad thing was, and we can get deeper oil and gas. We can use it. I don't know how they do that.
Oh, yes. We'll use the CO2. We'll inject it. We'll take the CO2 capture from smokestack industries like coal-fired power plants.
Yeah.
We'll inject it into the ground somewhere. I mean, we'll have to transport it on rail cars or something, and inject it into the ground to pressurize the ground, to use the pressure, artificially created pressure, to force more oil and natural gas out of the ground.
Carbon dioxide has a lot. I guess that's what makes the bubbles.
That's completely insane.
So it's a lot of pressure in carbon dioxide as a molecule. Is that what it is?
Why do you even care?
I don't know. I just wonder what the mechanism.
Well, don't. It doesn't matter what the mechanism is. That's their actual policy. That's their proposal.
Yeah, and they're going to use it to
get more fossil fuels out of the ground.
And it's like, and then they use that, like they say it in the discussion.
And I've also heard proposals and schemes for taking carbon dioxide captured from the atmosphere or from smokestacks, using it with electricity, solar energy, essentially, to create liquid fuels, and then burn it in our cars again and release it back into the atmosphere. What? That's completely insane. That's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, and we are insane.
You're not. We're insane. We are completely insane as a species. These capitalists, these financial people, they're insane. They're completely unhinged.
Don't forget to.
They're so greedy and so sociopathic that they are going to essentially bury us all.
Right.
We're all going to be buried.
We're all going to die. And the thing is, don't forget to watch. Don't look up. And you can see Kat on his Cougar W. Just like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Right, as we're at the edge of life on Earth. But like and subscribe at YouTube. That's what we're co-processing right now. We're on YouTube Live at Cougar W on YouTube. But I also had you go on Facebook. We'll have to get like a little thing that puts us up here. I don't know.
It's too much for me. I don't care.
I know. So fine. So we're on Facebook and Barbara Lujan. Hello, Barbara. And so anybody else watching?
And I am going off of YouTube. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good 2022.
Who are these people? Do you know anybody?
Those are robots.
Are they? Terrible.